you should be dating or not, and whether, you should be dating a Christian or not, whether you should be dating in the church or not. What I know is that folks are dating. So no matter what the church has said and no matter what society has said, somebody is dating somebody somewhere. And since we know that that is the reality of the day, then what we need to do is just deal with the realities of the day and stay away from the trivial, conversation and argument that you're never going to find resolve with. Isn't that okay? And so listen, let's look at, first of all, the definition of the word date or dating. And it had two definitions. One said it was an appointment, especially a social engagement arranged beforehand. But then secondly, it said a person with whom one has such an appointment. And so basically then Webster is saying, listen, when you're dating someone, you really are just entering into a social engagement with a particular person. But you and I know that we have put a whole different definition on dating. And so if I'm dating you, there are some levels to that whole dating thing that you understand and that I understand and that we have, agreed together to enter into this thing. So when we are entering into a dating relationship, here's what it's saying. Number one, it's saying, listen, this relationship between you and I is exclusive. Right? That's number one, what it's saying. Also, it's saying that we're not seeing anyone else. Right? And then it says that there could possibly be future together with me and you. So if we run on that ticket, here's a couple of things that you need to think about right away. Number one, if you are going to date in the 21st century, it's an art form to it. And you got to decide right from the door, listen, I want to date, but I want to be kept. Yes. Then you get that. That's an old church term. That some of you may not be real familiar with, but in the Old Testament church, in the old church back in the day, that the saints of God used to encourage you to be kept. What it meant is that you, number one, were not entering into any level of sexual relationship with anybody unless they were your husband or your wife. Right? It meant that you weren't putting yourself in situations that was going to eventually or potentially cause you to fall. It being kept meant that you decided that you were going to erect boundaries and hedges to keep you from falling. And so every once in a while, the saints of God, the senior ladies in the church would come by and they say, how you doing, Sister Vanessa? And Sister Vanessa say, I'm doing well, ma'am, because you had to call them ma'am, or you had to call them sister such and such. I'm doing well, ma'am. I'm doing all right. And they say, well, are you still keeping yourself? They ask you. See, they didn't take the position that many of us take. That's not my business, and I don't need to touch that. And, they do what they... No, there's a responsibility in the Christian church where the senior saints are supposed to be an example, number one, but also they have permission by way of authority of the church to get in your life. They're supposed to raise you. They're supposed to train you. They're supposed to be an example to you, and they're supposed to know what you're doing. So you shouldn't be offended if somebody comes up and asks you, are you keeping yourself? Because if you're keeping yourself, you want to tell somebody. Look, it's only those who kind of doing stuff on the side that the conviction sets in. And when they ask you that question, look, your long extended pause has already given us your answer. So now you're trying to figure out, oh my God, how do I answer that? Because here's the other thing. Back in the day, the senior saints of God had discernment. The Spirit of God would literally give them this supernatural ability to know you. So they would be in your presence, and they didn't even have to tell you. They would just know, listen, Sister Goodson, I need to talk to you after service. So they weren't going to put you on blast in front of everybody, but they was going to get Sister Goodson in the little kitchen. And between frying chicken and fish, they was going to tell Sister Goodson, baby, you're not living right. You need to do something about how, and then they would say, and the kind of lifestyle you're living is not good for your children. You shouldn't bring all those men in front of your children because it doesn't give a good example. It's giving them the wrong idea of what's going on. So, baby, we need to pray for you. And they take that frying oil See, because they didn't have the anointed oil right then and there because they have it in the kitchen. But oil is oil to the senior saints of God. And man, they take their frying fish and oil and they end up having an impromptu tarry service with Sister Goodson so that she can start living a kept life again. Amen. So look, they didn't come up and tell what went on in the kitchen, but when Sister Goodson come up smelling like fish and chicken, we know what went down in the kitchen. And we know that, okay, the senior ladies that surrounded her, they tag teamed on her, right? They threw her into the turnbuckle, and then they threw her to another one, and they started praying about her because they felt responsible for you. And many of them had made mistakes that they didn't want you to make, and so they understood that it was their responsibility to hopefully help you to learn from their mistakes so that you don't make the same mistakes they made. Now, if you really want to be kept, what you would do is you wouldn't get mad. You would be glad that they were concerned enough about you to actually give you some private intercession time. But for those of you who now allowed your flesh to kick in and temptation was too great for you, you got mad. And what you would do, there's a number of things that folks would do. The first thing they would do is leave the church. So somebody would get mad that the saints of God actually didn't want them to fall and had enough responsibility to come and tell them that they were doing wrong. And you got mad at that and you would leave the church. Somebody else would try to find other disgruntled people in the ministry who were just as disgruntled as they were and practicing the same level of sin that they were practicing. And then we're going to try to create a new congregation within the congregation so that when I'm doing wrong, I don't have to leave the church and be on blast, but I can hide with the crew in the clique that feels like I do. And we can silently assassinate the saints of God. My goodness. This is all just old church stuff that I remember seeing, but I don't often see as much. And so it is vitally important that folks get involved in your business to make sure that you are doing what you need to do. But you've got to make up in your mind that I'm going to be kept. Because the real deal is this. If you don't want to be kept, you won't be. And matter of fact, you can develop the fine art of being unkept. And people won't know that you have a different lifestyle going on because we can act in the church. I mean, I'm telling you this, I believe this with all of my heart. When I sit and I look at the Academy Awards, when I look at the Oscars and I look at the Emmys and when I look at all of that stuff and I see all of those entertainers and all those actors getting those awards, I'll be sitting there saying, they ain't got nothing on such and such. Man, if you want the real Academy Award winners, man, some of them are sitting in pews in any church USA, and they have fine-tuned their art of acting, and they act like they're saved, and they act like they're Christians, and they act like they're living right, and they act like they love the Lord, and they act like they love you. As a matter of fact, they have, so fine-tuned this art of acting like they love you, they can be in your presence, and you think they love you, and they don't like you at all. But because they have learned so well how to fake you out, you can't even tell. And so if you don't have the discernment that the saints of God had back in the day, you sitting there telling people all your secrets. You're sitting there telling them all your problems. You're sitting there telling them all your stuff. And they sitting there saying, man, oh man, look at this mess. I knew she was a mess. I knew he was a mess. I knew this. And they just dogging you out. Because you don't even have enough discernment to stop telling people stuff about you that they don't even need to know about you. You running your husband or your wife down to the dude that like your husband or your wife. And so you telling the husband and wife, I don't even talk to him no more. We don't even have sex no more. We don't even go out no more. And he's sitting there taking notes. No, he ain't, well, okay, so Vanessa ain't been out in 2 months. Haven't had conversation in 3 weeks. And then when they subtly come in Vanessa's presence, they be like, hey, Vanessa, you want to talk? Vanessa haven't had a compliment in a couple of weeks. Hey, girl, I like those striped stockings. And because Vanessa is starved, because she's not hearing it from me. And the enemy already understands that it's validating. He'll call someone to say it at the right time. And all the while, these cats, and then somehow these men and women, they feel like, you know what? I've been married to my husband and my wife for so long that they won't do this and they won't do that and they don't need this anymore and they don't need that anymore. And as a matter of fact, as long as I do the basics, Everything is all right. Let me tell you from here, everything is not all right. The enemy is already plotting and strategizing against the person who says out of their mouth, oh, I would never do this, and I would never do that, and I would never think like this, and I would never think like that. You're one of the main ones that he really targeting, because when he can get you, man, it's like a major statement to some of the others who just can't even fight or survive. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so it is vitally important that we begin to maintain some of these things. So for those of you who are thinking about dating and you're single, first of all, look at all the married people. Don't close your eyes to what you see around you. Every one of us that's in this church that's married, if you're in this church and you're not married, you ought to be paying attention to us 24/7. And you ought to be seeing what you ought to be seeing what you need to see. You ought to be gathering the information you need to be gathering. And you ought to even be saying, well, you know what? They look pretty good with ant. Yeah, they look like they got an ant. And because there's vital information you can learn from us. Some of us are doing it okay, and some of us jacked up. Some of us got it going on, some of us all off the charts. Some of us have some real positive things you want to get, and others of us, man, God has put you in their presence so that you can make sure you don't duplicate what you see. See, we can't tell you that because we got to keep holding on and working things out. But you have a chance not to make mistakes like we've made, not to make decisions that we've made. Now, and I'm not dogging out marriage. Y'all know I'm pro-marriage, right? But the reality is that, listen, you don't want to duplicate everything you see because some of them are just not good. So if you're unmarried and you're single, you have to look at this thing and you ought to be learning some lessons from us. So what do you see? How do you see us interacting with our spouses? Do you ever see us holding hands? Do you ever see us rubbing up against one another? Do you ever see us in positive and productive dialogue with one another? Do you ever see us really looking out for one another? Do you see those little small little subtleties that just really say to yourself, wow, that's healthy. Wow, that's nice. Wow, that's good. Wow, that's motivating. Wow, that's encouraging. Do we ever sit together in church, or do we never, ever sit together in church? Do we come together as a family, or do we drive 3 cars to the church? Right? And listen, that could see that, because listen, you can't read too much into it. I could be coming from work. But investigate. How do they talk to one another publicly? How come she always rolling her eyes at him? How come he never, ever opens the door for her? How come she carrying all of those packages that dude can't even carry? I mean, small little subtleties that you ought to be learning. Listen, you don't even need the Bible to have a successful marriage. All you need to do is use some wisdom and pay attention. I mean, I want you to think about this. Think about this. The Bible is the blueprint, but if you didn't have it, everybody deserves to be respected. Everybody deserves to be treated kindly. Everybody deserves to be partnered with. So that's why you have some societal marriages that are better than Christian marriages. What's up with that? Well, what's up with it is that they've understood that certain principles are not even necessarily biblical. They're just right. Right? And so I should be able to say good morning and good night. I should be able to say, do you need help? And thank you. I should be able to say, baby, I appreciate that. And that was good. All right? I should be able to come home at a regular hour. So for all of those of you who are unmarried, if you want to be dating, even in the midst of the dating, you ought to be paying attention to how the person treats you. How do they talk to you? How do they consider you? What, do they respect you? Do they take liberties that they shouldn't take? Are they nice and appreciative? Can I get an amen from the... All right, let me move on real quick. So I want you to really let's be perfectly clear. Dating in the 21st century is tricky. It's very, very tricky, and it's tricky for folks in general, but it's very tricky for Christians in particular. And so when unmarried people enter into a dating relationship, you have to decide right away if you really want to be kept. Because if you don't really want to be kept, get your freak on. Really, I mean, I know, we don't tell folks that, but why not? Why play around? Why skin the fence? Why be in certain relationships and not enjoy it? Since you're going to end up in the same place anyway, enjoy it. Do your thing, man. Look, Go all out. For real. Because it makes no sense for you to be in there and, you're doing this, but you feel guilty, and you're doing that, and it wasn't pleasant, and you're doing this, and then you end up broken up in the relationship because somebody's saying, why are you not giving, and why are you not in the moment, and where you at? And well, because, I don't feel comfortable about this, and I don't. So maybe the Holy Spirit is trying to convince you that, okay, then don't do that. But if you can't control yourself and you don't have enough discipline to control those passions, go for it. Go for it and enjoy it. But if if you really want to have a healthy relationship, then some of those things are not going to benefit you long term. They really, really aren't. They really, really aren't. And you, man, I'm off. Oh, Lord have mercy. Look, I'm trying to stick to the script, man, because when I go on my own, I start getting in trouble. So if you desire to date, if dating is your experience and you really want to experience some social outings with some other people, listen, number one, it's okay to date people. It's okay to date people. But what you need to do is you need to understand that there should be some rules. All right? If I'm just going to listen, it's okay to go to the movies with someone. It's okay to have dinner with someone. It's okay, to experience the company of someone who is mature and adult like you so that you can experience that. But you've got to have some rules and some boundaries so that you can keep things orderly and keep things within bounds so that when you walk away, you're not walking away used and feeling guilty and traumatized and all that kind of stuff, heartbroken, mind all messed up. So you need to really do this thing with some rules. And then if you are professing Christians, then you really want to make sure that you erect these rules and these boundaries because it is so vitally important. So in preparation for dating, have number one. Here's point number one. Have constant conversation with God. Yes. Now, sometimes I feel bad in this place because it seems like every principle I teach starts with having constant, consistent communication with God. But if you want to be successful, you better take what I'm saying and write it down and log it. Watch this. Write this down. Having conversation with God disciplines us to have conversation with God. If you, listen, I'm not in relationship with Vanessa and we don't talk. Right? We can be roommates. But to be in real relationship, we have to communicate because communication is the lifeline of relationships. So I want you to really scan what you have. And if you don't communicate, and I'm talking about on a deep level, not just surface level, superficial. How was your day today? Cool. What are we having for dinner? Chicken. Did anybody call? No. Did we get any mail today? No. How you feeling? All right. See, you don't even use sentences anymore. It's like, all right. That's not relationship. That's not relationship. I've got to be able to say, how you doing today? And she should be able to say, sit down. See, this is an educated congregation, Jewel. How do you spell love? How do you spell love? That's a good one. That's a good one. But one of the ways you spell love is T-I-M-E. Who you give your time to says you place some value on. Because your time is something you give and can never get back. Once it's gone forever. And that's why, watch this. That's why you get mad at certain things and don't know why you're mad at them, but you know you're mad as Because how can you say you're dating me and we're in a relationship and I don't ever want to spend time with you? I don't ever want to spend time with you. The only time I want to spend time with you is when I want something from you. And after a while, even that time is short. That's messed up. Oh, Lord have mercy. I mean, listen, how can you say you're in a relationship with me and I can never go out with you? We can never take walks. We can never do picnics or whatever your thing is, just being able to communicate on a good level. So when you communicate with God, it's important because he knows you. Right? God knows what your future holds for you. God knows what your desires are. God knows what your intent is. God knows everything there is to know about you. And so you need to have dialogue with him about them. God, should I be dealing with them? Should I give them my time? Should I be going this route? What do you think about them? Watch this. Are they strong enough